Hey, this is McGarren. Just going to go over some charcoal basics with you on how to draw value. First off, going to start with these general charcoal pencils. See them here? This one is a 2B charcoal. The next one is a 4B charcoal. The last one is a 6B charcoal. The lower the number, the harder it is. So just think of B stands for black. So the bigger the number, the more black you're going to get that line. So the 6B is extra soft, meaning you'll get a really black line. This is considered to be soft, which will be a little bit lighter line, and the 2B will be a much lighter line. If you're using a Primo charcoal, it's a little bit smoother charcoal pencil, a little bit softer also, so that the 2B of a Primo would not match the 2B of a Generals. And you want to keep your values within a certain range. And I'll demonstrate what I'm talking about here. When you're using a charcoal pencil, don't hold it like a regular pencil. You don't want to hold it like this while you're writing, because that's writing and we're drawing. We want to hold it further back here towards the very end of the pencil so that when you're creating value, all of the weight doesn't go to the tip of the pencil. The weight stays on your hand. So if you put it onto the piece of paper like this and you start to create some value, you can get a relatively light value. If you hold it towards the tip like this, you have to really kind of pull back to try to get a lighter value. So hold it towards the back. You'll get a much lighter value. Tip number 2, crosshatching, which I will demonstrate. All I'm doing is I'm going in a circle. I'm starting at the top, drawing the line down, lifting it up, starting at the top, going down, and I'm slowly pulling my arm back as I'm going in that circle to be able to draw those lines. If I am wanting to crosshatch, there's this standard crosshatch, which I call basket weaving. It's when you draw a vertical line like this, and then you come across to the side at a 90-degree angle and draw a line like that. I call that basket weaving because it leaves little holes between your lines. So what I would like you to do when drawing value is start with a vertical line in a certain shape, keeping your lines really close together, slowly moving it away, and then change your angle by about 20 degrees, 15 to 20 degrees, and overlap it. Then you can come back in with light hand, go between the two values, and this will build a much more solid value structure than doing the basket weaving. Okay, another pro tip. The tip of this pencil, the tip here, you see that? Tip needs to be sharp. There it goes. You want a really sharp tip pencil. As soon as it starts to get down and get low, you're gonna start to get these little smudgy marks and stuff. I do not want you to create value by smudging. I'll give you an example. So here I have this value structure built up, and I'm going to take a paper towel. I'll come in and I'll start smudging it. What just happened to the value? So this value is lighter than that value. Because I smudged, I pushed the charcoal in the micro grooves of the texture of the paper, and it filled those voids, so it made it a darker value. When you're smudging, it is possible to smudge a little bit here and the residue that you have on the paper towel go to another area and start smudging. And you can create value that way that's very light. But I want you to stay away from smudging. No smudging. No smudging. Just good, nice, soft values. So I will create a little grid to show you how I would approach drawing values in a shape to create flat values. Generally speaking, Your lighter values, you want to use the hardest pencil that you can get. So there's a 2B, there's a medium, it's as hard as I can get. I know there are HBs and 2 H's. H stands for hard, well, just to remember it. H stands for hard. The larger the number with the H, the harder it is. So there's a 2B, it's the hardest charcoal pencil I could get. And this is what I'll use for my light values. Darkest, lightest. With our lightest values, I'd want to use my hardest charcoal pencil. So these 3, I would want to use my 2B pencil. For these values, I'd want to use my more soft charcoal pencil, which would be a 4B. Let me write this out. 4B. And then these guys would be the darkest value, and that's where I'd want to use my 6B. It's important to keep these all separate from each other, because if I start to take my 2B and come in here and start filling in value and then jump on top of it with the 6B, you'll get some really weird values because it'll start scratching the paper and the texture of it. So again, I'm gonna hold it towards the back here to create the value. Another little tip. If you don't want to smudge your paper with your hand because you're drawing all over and smudging your hand around, then I'd recommend getting a piece of paper to stick under your hand as you're putting it on the drawing page. That will make it so that you're not smudging whatever's on your hand onto your paper. So here, with my lightest value, I'm gonna go into the corner, hold it at an angle. It's okay if I get outside the line. I'm gonna do a second pass. All right, so that would be one value. I did 2 passes with it. There are some little areas, or what I would call holes, that I need to fill in. Just come in and start to fill in those little shapes that are lighter in value with a slightly darker value. That'll make it look more flat. So that is with my 2B. With the 4B here, I'm gonna apply the same amount of pressure, holding it as far back as I possibly can to create that value. Okay, so I held this with the same amount of pressure as I did with this. You see how it's a little bit darker and a little bit more scratchy, which is okay. This needs to be a darker value. I'm just gonna fill in some of those areas to make it more flat looking. Now I'm gonna demonstrate the 6B charcoal pencil. I'll put it right there. All right, hopefully you can see the difference in value. This is the lightest, this is a little bit darker, and this is a little bit darker. With my softest, my 6B charcoal pencil, sometimes when it's really soft, you'll get little chunks that are sitting in the tip of it, and you'll almost get a scratchy feel. I don't know if I'll be able to get that here. But if you do hear it scratch on the surface, all you have to do is rotate your pencil a little bit and try drawing again, and that will remove the scratchy charcoal piece. None of them currently have that issue, but all I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna build up this value, make it a little bit darker by, again, cross-hatching and slowly building up the value. Another tip with building up value: don't push harder on it. Slowly build up the value by doing multiple passes. And if you get outside the line, that's perfectly fine. But you want to try to go from one edge of the shape to the other edge of the shape and start over again. That way you'll get a flat shape. What I see a lot of students do is they'll do this coming across, and then they'll do this coming across. And what it does is it creates this little darker value band that sits at the starting point of each line. So try to go from one point all the way across to the other edge of the shape. Once I have my values built up, I'll just come in and clean up the edges with an eraser. So I can take this kneaded eraser to clean up the shape, and then you can crunch it and make a new tip to be able to erase whatever shape you need to. Kneaded erasers are awesome for small little details and subtle value changes. Let's say you have too dark of a value that's sitting right here. Kind of like this. Now, I don't want that to be in there because I want this value to be flat. So I'll take my kneaded eraser, get a small little tip, and I'm going to dab on that shape. I don't want to move back and forth like this, like you would with a regular eraser, because that's going to smudge it. I want to get a new tip, and I want to dab it. New tip, dab it. That will create a nice soft value transition and get away from all those little value differences. See, just lightly dabbing. If you want to erase an entire section, I would use a white eraser, black eraser, or pink eraser, just depending upon what color you have. These will erase really, really well and get you really nice crisp edges. The only downside is you get those nice little snot balls on your paper that you gotta wipe off. And if you wanna wipe them off without smudging, I'd recommend using a paintbrush. You can just lightly skim them off, or sometimes you can blow on the page and it'll remove it. So that's how you apply value. That's how you erase the value and the shapes. For this next assignment, I want you just to create nice, flat value shapes. I will create a value scale in this really quick and show you what to look for when creating values in relationship to each other. Here I have 3 separate values. It's much better, I can see it now. Right here, here, and here. Notice there's a hard edge between each of the values. The values are relatively flat. This is lighter, this is mid, this is darker. I can obviously go much darker than this as I go over, and I can go lighter than this as I come this way. You'll be creating for your value scale 9 separate values that will be like this. They will be more subtle in change than what you're seeing here with the 3, but I just wanted to show you this as an example. Another little tip. When you're drawing with your pencil, the main reason why I don't want you to hold it like you're writing is because, let's say I create some line or values that are sitting here. See how dark those are? Now I'm gonna create some squiggly lines that are sitting out here. See how light they are there? If I were to take an eraser and erase, I'm pushing really, really hard. I don't know if you can see it very much, but these lines are not disappearing. These lines are gone. So the further away you can hold the pencil, the more you can put your weight on your hand instead of on the tip of the pencil, the lighter your values are going to be. So when you're creating your value scale, I want to see a separation between each shape. I want it to be clean and crisp for each one, no smudging. Now I'll talk about how to create values in your perspective drawing. Here I just have a little box with a recessed object is going to be like a window. And here's your window seal, and then these are just flat walls. To create your value, you need to pick a plane. and create a flat value in that plane. So here I have a 2B. I'm going to start very light, and I'm going to fill in this entire side. And then I'm also going to fill in this side, but make it a different value. So from point to point, go across, fill it all in. Point to point, go across, fill it all in, from line to line. Now that I have two values here, this one is a little bit more flat than this one. You see all these little scratches and stuff in there? I wanted to do that for an example to say, I do not want you to have it look all scratchy and lined. It looks like you just quickly drew it in like that. No, you got to keep your lines really close together. Keep them very soft. Slowly build them up as they're coming around. So now we know that we have value coming around on both of these edges. I have to emphasize the window. Maybe the window is tinted. So I'm going to make the window itself darker in value and then darken this backside here because less light is going to be there. Okay, I'm switching to a 4B because I want to make this a little bit darker in value. Now I'm going to enhance the lines by drawing in the lines and fill in this value because I want it between here and here. I wanted a middle value. All right, so now I have this lighter value, this darker value, and this mid-tone value. These two are getting really close to each other, so I could either lighten it up with an eraser or darken this down. I think I'm going to darken this down a little bit more. Now I just go around and clean up my edges. One other thing, let's say I want to make a cast shadow and I want to make the shadow being cast, maybe the sun is coming kind of from behind, and I'll make this cast shadow come out from the side. I can just take this line draw it further away, and I'm going to make a darker value here because it's a cast shadow. That's something you should have learned with values. So now I've drawn these values in a value scale. I can see a difference between each of the values. They're not too close to each other. If you don't know if a value is too close to another value, squint down. And where you see a big change in value from light to darkness, let's say this is too big of a change, that means I either need to lighten this one or I need to darken this one. If I squint down and I see that there's not much of a difference in value, let's say these two are too close to the same value, then I need to either lighten one of them and compare, or I need to darken this one so that there's a step off. Either way, make sure that you can see a difference between each value when you're creating your 1 to 9 or 10 values. When you're creating your shapes or filling in your flat shapes, go from line to line. That will help you out with establishing a good flat value, and use the harder charcoal for lighter values and the softer charcoal for darker values. You can even get some really awesome dark values, but I don't want you to create really dark values like this. That's going to push really, really hard and make too much of a contrast between the subtlety of the values that I'm creating. Unless I want to make this a black abyss, then don't want to do that. All right, I hope these tips really helped you out, and hopefully you'll be able to apply them into your drawing. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns, or if you'd like to know any more tips about drawing with charcoal and making good flat values. Have a good day.